What's up guys, it's Kyle here at Laser Everything, and today I have a box. It's a box with a knife in it. If you're excited to engrave knives, then stick around because we're getting started right now. Alright, so as I said, we've got a box and we're going to be engraving something special on it today. And we got a nice anodized black handle, and it comes with a little blade guard. And we got a blade in there. We also have some additional blades. We're gonna do something a little special. Let's head over to the laser and take a look at what we got going on. We really appreciate Johnson Plastics Plus for sending this knife over for us to check out and do a project with. If you would like one of these as well, go ahead and check it out at Johnson Plastics Plus. The link will be in the description, as well as our Laser Everything discount code if you want to help support the channel and save yourself 15% off. All right, so we're over at the laser here, and we got a lot of engraving options here. For one, we can actually engrave the blade, which incidentally is swappable, so we can do multiple of those. We also have the knife handle, two sides. I don't necessarily want to engrave the bowl holes and stuff, so I'm going to show you a little trick on how we handle that. Now, if you guys have watched our live streams, you will already know this trick. You want to take if you're using your phone or whatever, and you go above it, you want to go as centered as you can in the frame and as far up as you can while still being able to see it. And the reason why is your camera has a fisheye lens. So the closer to the edges you get, the more skewed it's going to be. So if we use our flash, it's going to brighten that right up. So we're going to take that right over to the computer and we'll start designing. All right, so we're back over at the computer here. Over at the laser, we wanted to take a far off shot in the center of the frame to avoid any fisheye effect that's happening on the outer edges of the photo. So we can kind of zoom in here. I already dragged this in off my phone into Lightroom, and we're going to use the pencil tool, and we're on a tool path here, and we're just going to kind of start roughly tracing around the border. We're not really going to worry about too much on the curves because we're going to be able to correct that in post, but we just want to get a rough idea and an outline. So we're going to use this edit node option here on the left, and we're just going to start grabbing our contour line here to match up to the outside. We can go ahead and drag in our nodes a little bit if we were a little off laying them out, and you don't really have to get too picky here. And we're just dragging these out. Fix this a little bit, and if you find that you're just not getting enough granularity, you can use the I shortcut key to insert another node, so you can get a little bit more granularity in your work here if you need to. And again, I'm not really looking for perfection. We just want to get a rough outline because we're going to use this for framing. I want to bring this out just a hair. There we go. And I'm going to insert another node here, drag that in and drag this out a bit. And that's it. We got our little contour. Now the next thing we need to do, we're going to use the circle tool because like I said, I want to kind of use this to avoid certain areas. So I want to go ahead and avoid this screw hole here. So if you hold Control and Shift, it's going to keep your circle once you start it. First off, it'll pull out from the center, so it'll make it much easier to start and land where you want to, but it'll also scale it up equally so you don't end up with an oval because we know these are circles. So we're just going to kind of use these to avoid dropping stuff we don't want to on top of them. And we can do the same thing with the arrow keys here. We can use Control and Shift to really cut down on the size of our jumps. Sometimes these little details end up getting missed in a design, and it really just makes it pop. It brings it to the next level because ultimately if those screws end up loosening or coming out and going back in, they may not land on the pattern in the same place that they were before. So you may end up with a broken pattern and they're going to stick out like a sore thumb. I just like to avoid those entirely. Makes it nice and clean, and it's just an extra added layer of detail that only takes a couple seconds and you're good to go. So we're done there. I'm not going to engrave this portion of the blade, I guess you could call it the blade holder, but I am going to engrave something on the blades. We'll return to the blades after we do the handle here. Now that we have this, what we need to do is scale it to size. So I'm actually done with this image. I can delete that and I can highlight this whole thing and group it so nothing moves around. And what we want to do now is get a size reference. So it doesn't have to be 100% exact, but we want it to be as accurate as possible. I'm finding that along this curve and this curve, it's pretty equidistant down the length of it, as long as you measure straight. and I'm just going to connect a line here. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. Right now it's 35 millimeters. When I'm measuring it here in person, I'm getting about 23.5 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this to 23.5, and now I'm going to take this whole design, I'm going to drag from the corner and hold Control so it scales from the center, and I'm just going to drag it down until it roughly touches. That's it. Our scaling line here, because this is the scale we needed, is now touching our measured endpoints. So this is roughly to the size we need. It might be maybe a millimeter over, but it's close. So what we can do is we can utilize this to get our design framed up and scaled. So this is to the size we need. Make sure this is grouped, and then we're gonna hit P to center it in our workspace. Now that we have our outline and our holes kind of roughly where we need them to be, firstly, what we can do while these are ungrouped, we can actually get the rough outline kind of aligned as to where the knife handle is going to be on the bed. As you can see, I've already rotated this because this is going to be a little bit easier of an engraved position for me. But in any event, what we can do is get this roughly framed up. If it's too big, we can grab this whole thing and rescale it down just a little bit more to make sure it's fitting the way we want. Super simple, just grab like this, and you either drag from the corner or whichever dimension you need to change. If you need it to be narrower, you can grab from the side. If you want to scale all together, you can grab from a corner and it'll scale both the width and the height. And you can even use multipliers. So if you want to say maybe 5% smaller and you have this locked aspect ratio here, you could multiply by 0.95 and you would get 95% of the size. In my case, this is already scaled the way I need. What I would do next is take these circles and just make sure they're landing exactly over the bolt holes. If they're a little bit tight, you can actually take these and use the offset tool and just go a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, depending on if you want them just close or a little bit further away to give it a buffer so that there is no overlap. In my case, these bolt holes are exactly where I want them to be roughly, so I'm gonna go ahead and proceed. But I actually want to offset the handle inward just a little bit. We're going to go 1 millimeter inward, and that's just going to give me a nice clean border where the bevel is, just to make sure that we're not overflowing too much. Something I wanted to try. Kind of depends on what you're looking for in the design. That's what I'm going to do with this one. Just to make sure I have a copy of this if I need it, I'm going to select everything and hit Control D to duplicate it and move it off to the side just in case I need it. I'm going to select our inside line here that we're going to be using for our engraving to align, and I'm going to select all of these circles. And you might see me making a square to grab these. If you didn't know, imagine you're going up and to the left when you click and drag. That will grab and select everything that you touch with the square. If you go the opposite way, you'll notice the color is different now. It's red instead of green. You have to envelope an entire shape inside the square in order for it to be selected. So if I do that with this exterior line and I go up and to the right, I can't envelope this whole line, but if I go from right to left with it, it will select it now. We don't need that, so I'm gonna deselect it. So we got what we need selected, and I'm gonna go ahead and group it. It's going to act as our cookie cutter shape for our design that we're gonna be doing. Now, there's two ways we can do this, right? We have images, or rasters, and then we have vectors, and we can work with both in Lightburn. Now, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is grab my design here, and we're gonna just go off to the side and paste it in. Now, this is one of the designs that I prepared, and conveniently it's actually perfectly scalable, so I can infinitely scale this. I want it just to be a little bit tighter of a design for a lot more detail. Let's cover the first way to do this. Since it's already set up, we can grab this design and we can grab our highlighted group here, and I can go ahead and just kind of put this roughly where I want it and scroll in, and you can see that line there. Another way you can do it, now that I did that, you can actually turn off that layer, grab the outline that you need, turn the layer back on, and now you're all set. You can just control and click on your design. And what we're looking for over in the Boolean tools here on the left is Boolean intersection. So that essentially means that wherever each of these two grouped items overlap is where it's going to keep material or design, essentially. So we're going to do that, and as you can see, it cookie cut it out. I don't like the design that way, so I'm just going to select it and rotate it, kind of like something like that. And we're going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to grab that group, turn the layer back on, control and click on our design. Much better. So I like that. I like the way that laid out. Now let's talk about the other way we could do that. So I'm going to just duplicate this again, and we'll paste our pattern in again. just like before. We'll kind of put it sort of the way it was. So what I'm going to do is make this a raster image now. We're converting it to a bitmap. So nothing crazy. See, no tricks. We're on an image layer. I can click on this and it's actually separated. So we need to group these once again. So those are on a layer, and we're going to control and click on our image, and we're going to right click and use apply mask to image. Now you have likely seen me use this before. We've done it on live stream, and this allows you to deselect everything, click on where the image is, and you can drag the image through your cookie cutter shape. And I keep saying cookie cutter shape because honestly, that's just the easiest way I can compare it to anything. But you can drag it underneath your little cookie cutter, and we can scale it down to our heart's content and move it around and twist it and turn it and whatever we need to do to get it the way we want it. And let's say we like it like that. Well, we can right click and we can flatten image to mask, and that locks it in for us. So this is now an image with our cutouts the way we wanted. So if you have a design that's an image that's just not feasible to do a trace on, this is simple enough to do a trace on, so I would totally change this over to a vector again. But in any event, if you have a design that's just not awesome for what you want to do in vector format, you can work with it this way if this just simply works better for you. We already have it the way we want it over here, so I'm not going to do it that way this time around. From that point, you now have the tools and know-how to do it either way. Next thing you'll want to do, make sure you have everything aligned. We have our design here. I'm going to go ahead and outline it. I already kind of roughly aligned it when we were talking before, but I'm just going to select our pattern. I'm going to go ahead and frame it up and just make sure it lands where I want it to land. If not, we can Control Z to back up. We can shift things around on the layer and then cookie cutter it again, and that's it. And if we mess up or we need it, we have our duplicate. And this is why I keep a duplicate of our finalized outline just in case. The last step, since we're going to breeze through it when we get over to the laser, you're going to want to go through your library and apply your settings now. If you don't have a library, if you need a starter library to test and fine tune from, check out the lasereverything.net site where we have lots of material settings for you to pick from, and also the community libraries where the community have tested out settings that worked for them, particularly for their laser combination, lens, and everything, and they shared them to the online library. So give them a thanks by checking out theirs as well. I'm going to go ahead and get my settings applied here. So we're in my settings here, and we're just going to go ahead and assign our engrave option. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in, we're going to kind of follow the path of the knife in this orientation, and we're just going to start with 2 passes. Just want to make sure that everything's coming out good. Depending on how it comes out, we can increase passes to get more depth. Now off to the laser. What I'm going to go ahead and do is individually select my little holes here that I snipped out, and I'm just going to make sure that those are lining up. If they're not, I may have to shift the design a little bit or shift the knife, but I just want to make sure they're in the right spot. If they're not, if they seem too big or too small, we can think about rescaling, but I just want to make sure we're in the right ballpark here. And it looks like our holes are all good, and I'm gonna just grab my exterior and frame that, and it looks like we're in the ballpark there as well. At least good enough for testing. If it's a little off, you know, it's my knife, I can live with that. We're gonna go ahead and grab our design, and we're just gonna make sure that it looks all happy and it's kind of where we want it to be. Now, one thing we could do that we didn't discuss is we could do a negative on this pattern in order to get the lines instead of the bricks to be engraved. It all kind of depends on what you want. In my case, I want the little blocks chewed out so that we have the lines to grip with, be a little bit more of a grippy surface. So I'm gonna go ahead and proceed with our engrave, and we'll see you on the other side. So currently we're getting set up to frame up the other side, and we need to mirror this design because we're now doing the other side of the handle. So if we select everything here and we go up to the top, we can horizontally mirror it or vertically mirror it. I'm just going to flip it so we keep the same knife orientation. We got to line up the holes again. So I'm going to go ahead down here because these aren't grouped currently. I'm going to select each of my little hole cutouts, because ultimately if these are lined up, the exterior line should also line up. So just focusing on a couple of smaller points that are easier to work with is just sometimes easier to manage. So here we are with the knife, and this is our first side, and as you might be able to see, let me see if I can get a good angle, we got some pretty good depth on that. Now this was 8 passes with the settings that I showed on screen. We were a little off just a hair on centering 2 of those holes, but not a huge deal. We're gonna go ahead and keep it consistent and get this side lined up. And don't forget to mirror your design if you're flipping your knife over, because otherwise it's not gonna line up right. Okay, we're all lined up. Let's go ahead and run it. Alright, so we're all done, and let's see how we did. A little blemish down here from honestly lack of tuning on my part, but the rest of this came out absolutely gorgeous. Now I could have filled this part in, and I didn't, because honestly that was an oversight on my part, but that's totally fine. I will include a secondary side that doesn't have this bevel out in the file when I upload this exact template to the project database on the Laser Everything website. So if you want to follow along and do this project, I'm going to go ahead and include that template on the project database. With the handle done, now we got to go ahead and do the blade. I've gone ahead and removed the blade. I want to do something a little interesting with this. The sky's kind of the limit. It's just a piece of steel. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is put my little backstop in here, and we're gonna play around with this a little bit. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and bump this up into the corner, and I can very conveniently take an outline photo just like I did with the knife. For the sake of timeliness, we're going to go ahead and skip that process. If you want to follow along with that, you can, but it's the same process. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little design for a couple of these blades, as well as the box of replacement blades that came with it. So we'll have a little style to go along with the blades as we swap them out. So that said, back to the computer. We're kind of done with this. Again, I will update this template so that it includes a secondary side without this little cutout, and that again will go in the project database. I'll include a link to that in the description below if you want to follow along. We're going to move that off, and we're going to jump right into this. So to save time, I went ahead and did an outline on this so that you don't have to watch me do the same thing I did with the handle over here. If you want help going through the steps on this, please go ahead and rewind, and you can follow the same process. It is the same thing. I'm actually going to do one with the same design just for the giggles. I'm going to offset this by 0.5 millimeter inward. And this is the one that I will be using to cut out my design. Now I'm going to duplicate it because when we use it as a cookie cutter, it's going to disappear. And we're going to shrink this way down so that it fits into this. Extend it up a little bit more. Perfect. Okay, grab our outline and grab our shape. Again, doing the same thing with our Boolean intersection, and we now have that done. So that's one design. So I'm going to move that off here, and because we have our little alignment shape over here, it won't be a problem to put it back. And I got another project surprise. So what I went ahead and did was I went over to ChatGPT and I said, hey, please provide me with the top 20 dad jokes, because we all need a little goofy giggle in our life, right? So I'm just going to go through these and pick a couple of my favorites, and I'm going to go ahead and engrave those onto the blade. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and put this on this side here for my answer. The reason why we're doing that is because when we engrave onto this side and we go to flip it over, this is going to be on the back side of this. So you can read the joke on one side of the blade and see the answer on the other. At least that was my thought on that. Let's go ahead and grab a second joke and we'll do the other side. And I picked another one that I liked. And if you didn't know, you can actually utilize the Shift-Enter option to get your lines to break. And let's go ahead and do the same thing. We'll duplicate this one. And just not gonna fit the way we want. So we'll break it. I think that's good. 2 jokes. We got a blade design to work with. Before we head over, we do also need to set our settings. We're gonna go down to our steel, and I'm just gonna use an anneal setting here. I'm not looking for a crazy mark. I'm not looking to ablate it because I don't wanna weaken the blade. I just wanna leave a little surface mark just so it's kind of peeking out. So this is what we're gonna go with, anneal. This is on the 100 watt M7 JPT source. This is what we're working with. I'm actually gonna turn on bidirectional fill, and we're gonna get this going. Okay, we are done with this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and select these. We're gonna group them and move them off. And we're now going to grab these two, group them together, and we're going to center it up to our original outline here, and frame that up and send it. And for our last one we're going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and we're going to center it up to here, and we're going to go ahead and mark this as well. Alright, so we're all done engraving, and we now have an interesting little design, just to dress things up a little bit. Now you can, of course, see the surface blemishes in this metal. It's also a work tool, so not that huge of a deal, but it at least pretties it up just a little bit. And we can go ahead and stick that in there. And as you can see, we're pretty happy with the results on our handle. So yeah, all in all, pretty great project. Pretty awesome little knife. You can even see the little design through there. Let's jump back to the computer and finish up with our thoughts. And we're back from the laser. So check this guy out on the big camera here. It is just like having grip tape, but built into the knife. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this blade because that looks pretty good too. It's awesome. One thing that I will be updating is on this side, you do need the little thumb slot removed from the tab, but on this side, I'm gonna go ahead and add that in. So there will be a second side in the template that I will be uploading to the Laser Everything project database. We'll make sure that's available to you if you want to follow along with this project. If you want to get your hands on one of these knives, but not engraved, you can get one on the Johnson Plastics website. We will include a link to that as well. Thanks to Johnson Plastics Plus for sending this over so we can do a little project for everyone. If you want to save 15% and also support us here at Laser Everything, there will be a 15% off coupon code down in the description below for you to use as well. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content and you got value out of it, please smash that like button, get subscribed, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out the next time we upload another video. If you want to support us even more, check out the Laser Master Academy. It is the #1 way to support what we do here on the channel. It helps support the team and what we do, all of the community tools, and all of the project and content videos that we make. We really appreciate your support to all the people at the LMA and for you guys watching. And if you want to join one of the other free communities that we have the links to the Discord and the Facebook group down below as well. Thanks again. You guys have a beautiful day, and we'll see you in the next one.